Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today with conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen and follow and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. Oh, and here we go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're here. Scott Perry, thank you for coming back, an original key player on the Dear Business Coach podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. It's great to be a repeat offender here on your podcast.
Well, I'm nervous, so let me just get that out of the way.
Nervous about
I'm
what?
not
You and
sure.
I are
I
old
know.
friends.
I know. So this is a test, right? Because I'm familiar with your work. We've talked several times before, and now I have to know my stuff.
Okay, well, as soon as you have my stuff figured out, let me know what it's all about.
Okay. Well, specifically, I think today would be an appropriate time to use your latest book as a instead of a profile, right? So as an introduction, I like to pick a sentence or two about you or your background. And today I'd like to use your book. And so, Scott Perry, you have recently released, actually on Thanksgiving of 2024, Close the Gap. Build a fulfilling and prosperous business on your terms that funds and fits your ideal lifestyle. And I read that from Amazon. That's available on Amazon right now. And you know what? Or not the byline. There is a quote here from Nick Peterson, author of Bumpers, and I think this is a good time to read this out loud too. He says, "In a dopamine addicted world wired to seek more, Scott Perry shares a practical, profound, and powerful perspective shift in Close the Gap. This book will help mitigate overwhelm and shift your ambitions from seemingly impossible endeavors to basically inevitable outcomes." Well, that's good.
Yeah, that was a good blurb and appreciated
Blurb,
for
that's the
sure.
word. So, you know what? I had some notes for us today, and what I had originally sent to you in an email about another podcast episode, I had some questions for you about engaging the field. I wanted to ask you about that related to this phrase that I hear you use a lot, playing your game. And I've asked you questions in coaching sessions before for my personal interest about uh, paying attention to data. What kind of data am I looking for when I engage the field? And I am following you and your workshops around also this book, Close the Gap. I'm thinking a lot about what is the data that we're looking at when we go into the business world for ourselves. And while you are coaching us in your group around figuring out how to close the gap, whatever that is for you individually, drilling down to what it is we're looking for in that process.
Mm.
How do I even identify what I'm looking for? So, what does it mean to play your game?
Well, so although I do a lot of coaching with people around their businesses and their business goals and strategies for accomplishing those goals and less time with less effort with less risk, I think that it's important to frame where work fits in our lives, and that will help me answer your question about playing your game. Uh, my a little bit of my background is I have been applying ancient philosophical and spiritual disciplines to making sense of the world, making sense of myself, making sense of my life, and making sense of my work for a really long time. I first collided with most of the books that I reference most often in the seventh grade. what they all talk about is basically, what's the meaning of life? They challenge us to think about what our philosophy of life is. They challenge us to think about the way we are being and showing up in the world and how we decide and step into what we're becoming and all this sort of thing. Work is an interesting thing in that the basic definition of work is basically the transfer of energy. Every living creature works. Plants work by soaking up sunlight, taking water and nutrients from the ground, creating limbs, buds, flowers, fruit, etc. That's work, transfer of energy. Human beings do the same thing, but we are unique in that because of this consciousness thing that we have, we actually use work as a way of finding fulfillment and building meaning in our life. This is why most of the time when we meet someone, we say, "Hey, what do you do?" Right? We want to know what they do for a
Mhm.
living. So if work is one of the primary ways that we build identity and forge meaning in our lives, and we are playing this thing called the game of life all the time, then it's probably a good idea for you to play the game of life on your terms without compromise. Because if you're playing someone else's game, it's a game you can never win. And if you're playing by somebody else's rules, then it's always going to be, again, really hard to win on your terms or even to play on your terms. So play your game is just in some ways it's a cute way, but it's also a very important way that I make sense of everything that I do because if you're gonna it's a way of helping us answer the primary question that the ancient philosophers and spiritual practitioners asked of us. Know thyself. You have to know yourself before you can play your game. And if it's called the game of life, then it's meant to be played, and things that you play are also meant to be fun. And so, one of my other basic assertions is you should be not only should you be doing work that aligns with who you really are, what you're really good at, and where you really belong, but you should also be enjoying it, finding fulfillment, and maybe even a little bit of joy in it every single day.
Are you a LinkedIn user? If you are, you can join me for LinkedIn Live Audio with Elizabeth every week, usually on Mondays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I will have a LinkedIn Live Audio where we talk about podcasting for executives who speak and podcasting for team leaders who speak. These are the themes that are currently running. If that sounds like something you're interested, visit me, Elizabeth Walker at Work, on my LinkedIn profile. Yeah, fun and joy. You can put both of those in the same thing, in the same pot. Well, I think you said something very interesting there. Terms on your terms without compromise. Those are fighting words. Right? I mean, how am I supposed to define terms without compromise and not tick somebody off?
Yeah.
I mean, what? So let's. So the next question is kind of to focus on who I see you talking to a lot, which is solopreneurs and folks who maybe not so different from myself will come to you when they're exploring, what am I doing, what is my game? And that's that was definitely the case for me. And certainly you have folks who are established in business and have been in their field for a long time, and there is a shift that has already started for that person to be a solopreneur. So finding those terms without compromise is scary, especially if you have a reputation to uphold and um, you want to share with people that you are solving a problem or providing a solution through your own work. I want to present myself as someone who has it figured out. And if I'm a solopreneur, kind of defining that for myself, figuring out what my terms are, that's scary, right? Because I'm an adult. I shouldn't be, out here exploring and journaling like I'm in seventh grade, but that's what it feels like.
Mm. Well, I guess the short answer to your question is who says?
Okay.
And the longer answer, just to speak directly to this idea of on your terms without compromise, we're just talking about boundary setting, and
Mm,
there's really good science around the importance of setting boundaries and managing expectations in terms of your sense of flourishing and fulfillment in the world. So. Um, and defining your terms is is a challenge, but it's less of a challenge to because I think the core assertion that I have around your question is that when we think, oh, I should have it all figured out, I should be acting like an adult, I should be doing what I'm supposed to be doing, like that's a measurement of your success against a societal norm. And that's, why I say, well, who says? Like, yes, you can play the game of life as you have been programmed by biology and evolution, which has a lot to do with, um, fear-based behaviors and obeying social norms and that sort of thing. Um, but you and then on top of our kind of programming, there's the societal conditioning, mostly through institutionalized education and occupation. What I have found over and over and over again with the folks that I work with, because although many of them are younger, um, I would say a majority are in that 35 to 65 year age bracket where they've played the game of life by the expectations of their parents and by the expectations of society, and they've played along with institutionalized education and occupation, and they reach a point in their lives where they go, this isn't I'm like I'm not happy. This is not what I signed up for. I think there's more to me in my life than what I'm doing right now. And of course, we don't get any training, at least here in the good old US of A, as far as I know, in school or on the job to explore our uniqueness, our distinction, our values, our guiding principles, our talents and skills. And we are definitely not encouraged to weave those into some sort of endeavor that is unique to us and that brings us fulfillment and maybe can bring us remuneration and the revenue that we need to meet our financial obligations, but also just fund the lifestyle that we want to live. So is it scary to uh to deviate from the norm, which is to just go along and get along, and instead do the more challenging work of taking a long look in the mirror and having a long conversation with yourself, hopefully, with a trusted guide or mentor to really dial in who you are. What are your core values? What are your guiding principles? What are your actual talents? The unique way that you do the things that you do and the way that only you can do. And how can you take some of those skills that you learned in school and on the job and align all of that with your values and your beliefs and your guiding principles, and find people in the world who share your values and need your talents to enhance their lives, and craft some sort of endeavor around that where you are bringing value into the world, the unique value that only you can bring into the world, which will give you a sense of flourishing and fulfillment, meaning and significance, and help you craft and live a legacy before you pass away. Uh, and then,
Mhm.
uh, because at some point, we're what I would say to anyone that is, fearful of this kind of exploration is have a conversation with yourself on your deathbed. I mean, if you are going to be lucky enough to, live a long life and, not pass instantaneously in some sort of horrible accident, there will be a reckoning at some point, and you will look back. And do you want to look back and say, I'm really glad that I played along with my parents' expectations and the expectations of school, and that I was a good soldier on the job and did all the things, and that, and maybe you reap the rewards of that, big house, fancy cars, 2.5 kids, whatever the norm is. Um, are, is that will that have been a life well lived, or will you be at that moment where you are transitioning to whatever's next after this and saying, I really wish I had this, that, or the other? And that to me is way more frightening and way more motivating and I'm not encouraging anybody, just to be absolutely clear. Like, I'm not saying ditch your day job and go find yourself. I'm saying you can, and this is what Close the Gap is all about. Close the Gap is about uh, helping solopreneurs optimize an existing business or create a business that actually aligns with who they are, what they're good at, where they belong, that brings them a sense of fulfillment and flourishing and prosperity in a way that is very low risk, that is optimized for outsized rewards by taking micro steps, by doing the next right thing, by taking some time to be thoughtful and deliberate about what is the lifestyle that I want for myself, and what are the ways that I can fund that lifestyle and have it fit around the lifestyle that I want to live. And that doesn't mean, but for many of my clients, that can mean I'm working a day job that helps me take care of all my financial responsibilities while I build this other thing that maybe is never going to be anything but a hobby, but maybe becomes some sort of thing that replaces the income that I'm earning in some sort of corporate day job. And it's just a way of helping you get closer to that idea that you shared at the beginning. Like, play your game on your terms without compromise. Figure out who you are, what you're good at, where you belong, and what can you be doing that will help you have a sense of flourishing and fulfillment, make a little bit of a difference while you're doing it, and provide you with that opportunity at the end of it all to look back and say, that was a really good ride. I did some really good things. I showed up for myself in my life and the people that I cared about, and I did some did something meaningful and fulfilling.
You're really good at making sure that you add in all of the elements, right? Don't forget anything. You always make sure that you say things like, I'm showing up for the people that I care about, that it's fulfilling. And you put the word fulfilling and prosperous in the same sentence. And you're good at pulling those words together so that you are intentionally including all of those things that come from the work. I feel like, that we're like doing the work can be the pleasure, right? Finding the work you like to do. I talk about that a lot, about, what is it that we're actually spending our time doing every day. And that I love doing these interviews. And so for example, this is something that gives me energy. And we talk about that a lot too. And I find you reminding folks in your groups to think about things that feed you, and there are other people in your groups that will second that, for an entire hour. And it's one of the things that I find interesting, as far as figuring out kind of like what is your reward, what is a reward for you. And before I can really understand what is the reward or the outcome, um, I am listening to you talk about things like first principles. What are first principles? And a minute ago, you used the phrase guiding principles. And One of my biggest attractions to your groups and your discussions is your grasp of philosophy. Philosophy is something that, and you actually have corrected me a couple of times on the difference between philosophy and ethics studies, for example. And I feel like that for some people that's a deep dive, that in and of itself is a lot of work to think about. Well, what are my guiding principles? What is a guiding principle? Do I even really know what the definition of that is? And I'm going to get to the question about data and engaging the field, and before I do that, I need to know what I think my guiding principles are. So can you help me out here with this word around principles?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, well, just one quick note on philosophy. Yes, we think of philosophy as this kind of academic navel gazing, and you have to read these really long, dry texts to understand the big ideas that are, unpacked by people that don't spend a lot of time engaging the field and put testing their ideas in reality. They just think about them and write about them. In ancient times, philosophy was so. I have this assertion that philosophy or academia is where philosophy goes to die. And I feel this way about some of my favorite art forms too. Like jazz was a very vibrant musical form until, up about to the time you started to be able to get a degree in jazz. And then all of a sudden nobody listens to jazz anymore. So there is this thing about, when we take these vibrant art forms and try to take them apart and put them together into some sort of uh, curriculum that can be dripped out by someone with some sort of certification uh, in a way that's, a cookie cutter approach. It is a way of destroying something living that and vibrant. So, my approach to and my definition of philosophy, I mean, philosophy just means love of wisdom. It's a way of being in the world. And in ancient times, everybody was having conversations about what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be happy? How can I be more of both? And these conversations were taking place across all strata of society, in public places, in homes, and so forth. So you don't if you are turned off or intimidated by this idea of how do I come up with my philosophy of life, all you're trying to do is figure out who am I, and you know what does it what does it mean to be human, to be me? What does it mean to be happy? What's my definition of happiness, and how can I be more of both? And a lot of ancient traditions talk about how you can do that without creating hard harm for other people, actually enhancing other people's lives. There's all sorts of ways that you can start to think about that. When you are thinking about who you are, to your question around guiding principles, what you are talking about is what are your core values? Like, what are your core
Okay.
beliefs? What are your assertions about the world? Um, and the distinction that I would encourage people to think about is, you know, it's one thing to say, I believe in honesty. I believe in fairness. It's another thing to show up every single day and tell the truth all the time and to treat everybody with kindness and compassion.
Mhm.
And that's an expression of your virtue. So values are what you believe, virtues are what you actually do.
Mhm.
They're values in action. And you mentioned the word reputation earlier. I mean, we all think this idea that you have to protect your reputation. You actually have no control over your reputation. You have control over
Okay.
your character, right? If you have control over whether you act like the kind of person who believes in honesty and fairness, but you will be judged. Your reputation is what do other people say about you, not what do you say about yourself. And social media messes this up big time because you can literally create a facade of the way you want to be present yourself in the world, and you can be a completely different kind of person living a completely different kind of life. So I would say that, when it comes to, I I have a lot of exercises and scientific surveys that I use to help people define their values and define their talents, uh, that have been time tested and used by lots of different organizations and programs over lots of years. But if you want to know, what do you really believe, like what are the values that you hold nearest and dearest to your heart, just think about the things that really tick you off. If someone cheating at the game of life or in a relationship or at a card game really, sends you into a spiral of anger, and outrage, then honesty is probably one of your core values. If you get really upset about seeing people treated unfairly, then justice and fair play and that sort of thing is probably a core value. So it's not as hard as you think. You can be as kind of judicious and disciplined about it as you want, but it doesn't take a whole lot of self-contemplation to come to some degree of self-awareness about what your core values are, what your guiding principles are, and it doesn't take a lot of thoughtful uh, reflection to find the places that maybe you're not showing up in alignment with those things in your life, and then you can decide that those are things that you want to work on. Um, the first principles piece is a little bit different than guiding principles because first principles are the necessary components to, uh, the essential foundational elements of any system, whether that's a belief system or a system for accomplishing a goal or a task. Um, just to give a quick example, if I am in business and I'm trying to figure out how to be more successful, which may mean to be able to do what I do in less time. It might be being able to do what I do and make more money. It might be a combination of those two things and many other things. But when it comes down to, what makes up a business, reasoning from first principles, all you really need is an offer, an audience, and a way of putting that offer in front of that audience. Marketing, right? Those are the three core, the first reasoning from first principles. What happens and why I think people get confused, and in some ways why they get scared, is when we are programmed by nature and biology to always be chasing after more.
Mhm.
So what happens is I'm going to start a business. Now, fundamentally, all I need is an offer, an audience, and a way to put that offer in front of the audience. But what I will immediately go to is I need a website, I need a logo, I need a blog, I need a lead magnet, I need an email list, I need a YouTube channel, I need a podcast, I need an Instagram account, a Facebook account, a LinkedIn. Like you just start to put together all these tools and you start to think about all the tactics and strategy that you see other people with businesses doing. You don't need any of that. I started my first business with a Google Doc and a PayPal account.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
had, here's what I do, here's what it costs. Do you want this? And I literally just sent it to people that were already asking me for help.
Mhm.
Now, everything I've done since then has only complicated that process. So after I started a bit successful business and then ruined it by doing too many things and worrying too much about my reputation and trying to sound right and smart all the time, I have been on this long journey to get back to the bare essentials, which is how do I show up and help people so that they can see the difference I can help them make for themselves, the way that I can help them enhance their own lives. And that happens through conversations just like this all the time. And that's literally all I need. All I need is a way to show up and do what I do. Just all I need is someone that's willing to have a conversation with me. so I can demonstrate how I do what I do, why I do it, and get them the results. And I'll I'll never be wanting for business if I can fulfill my promises
Mm,
to the people that I am already engaged with. Not only will I never lack for customers, but I'll probably have an abundance of too many, because if I delight every single person I help, they will, by virtue of just showing up in the world differently, attract business. Not to mention that, people that you are actually able to delight will talk about you, and probably won't be able to stop themselves from talking about you, and helping you spread the word about what you do. So that was
mhm.
kind of a long way around it, but that's um, those are the fundamental things.
Yeah, I mean, you actually, when you speak also about people feeling delighted, being delighted, and that becomes the marketing for you. I mean, that just seems so too good to be true almost. I see it work. I see it happening, right? And I also can see how I could try to fabricate that if I wanted to. And so that brings me as well to the data, the piece about looking for, what paying attention to what kind of data am I going for when I am trying to engage the starting to engage the field. And literally, when I say that, I'm thinking about going to market, having conversations, having an offer that you show to a potential client participant. And data for me is what's the feedback. Now sometimes that feedback is sometimes I say that, and you might think that I mean, well, after the product is presented, meaning your workshop is done, after you have provided a lesson or coaching, that you ask for feedback, and we get somebody who says that was amazing, it changed my life, here's my testimonial, go put it on your website. And those are fun pieces of data. However, what I'm looking for is something before that, right? Before I'm asking for someone to transact with me, a testimonial, which is super valuable. At the very beginning of engaging the field, I'm still trying to figure out, is my offer even interesting to people? So, and this ties into the question about, or the idea around figuring out your reward, and what are those guiding principles in the beginning, so that when you get to time and place when you are collecting data, I am uh, remembering what it is I'm looking for. So I'll give you an example. The You and I are familiar with the space of workshops, or providing some type of experience that might happen either online and then moves to in person. And all along the way there, I'm asking for people to tell me if they'd be interested in coming. Is this something you'd be getting value from when you come here? And then what I learned in that process of thinking about what I'm asking folks for in terms of feedback is, you said fun and joy. And I use this word fun. And I tell people a lot, well, I hope it's going to be fun for you. I want you to come if that sounds like fun to you. I'd like you to accept an interview if this sounds like fun for you. And sometimes people laugh at me. And I've had some people kind of react like, okay, well, that's not really the point here, And so that's my question to you about helping me and folks. I kind of answer that question internally. What is the data that I'm looking for? How do I identify the feedback that I'm looking for, in terms of, am I creating the work that I'm interested in, or am I just creating uh a response worksheet that I can collate into another spreadsheet of 5 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars?
Yeah. Well, this gets us into the process of the Close the Gap handbook. And
Okay.
when we're talking about rewards, one of the things that I say is the process is the shortcut and the reward. Like, you can have the perfectly articulated offer and have and find the eagerest audience and put that offer in front of that audience in as masterful a way as you want. And for any of a number of reasons, having to do with time and randomness and all the things that are uncertain, nobody purchases. And that might feel like a failure. But I would say, and you touched on this too, the ultimate reward is t- basically to do your best and to maintain your intention and integrity. Like that's all you're actually entitled to. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you are entitled to the fruits, you are entitled to your labor, but not the fruits of your labor. It means you're entitled to your work, you're not entitled to any rewards. So but what I find is that if you do meaningful, good work and you do it with intention and you collect the data and you iterate and improve based your systems based on what the data shows you, that over time the other rewards that we usually think about in terms of reputation and financial reward actually come. So the process that I articulate and close the gap is based on 90-day sprints, the 90-day accelerator. So you choose one clear objective. Well, the first thing is, again, you have to have the vision for the life that you're working towards. Like your work is supposed to enhance and fund the life that you want to live. So you have to have some clarity about what lifestyle you're working toward. When you have that, then again, you can reason from first principles, like what are the three things that have to happen for me to, get that kind of lifestyle. But within that, there's going to be like, what's the most immediate constraint that I need to address and navigate to get closer to that business that funds and fits that lifestyle. So the core problem that people have when it comes to this whole question you're asking around data is their objective is I need to make more money, or I need to have more clients, or I need more products, or I need more podcast guests, or whatever. More is not, you can't collect data to achieve more because you have not defined what more is. So the first time I work with someone, oftentimes they don't have um, any clear idea about what kind of success they could expect. So if I were to just use your podcast as an example, let's just say for the sake of argument that the um, the the way that you earn a living is through your podcast. Maybe that's through sponsorship, or maybe it's the podcast is the lead magnet that gets that acquires leads that you convert into back end offers, whatever it is. But let's just say that for the sake of argument, your podcast is the thing that you're working on because it is how you are sharing your offer, engaging with your audience, and creating leads that you can convert into clients. Well, the first step would be you could look back and say, okay, well, in the past, um, I got one client because I broadcast 10 episodes. And to get those 10 episodes, I had to ask 100 people to be on the podcast. Okay. So now you just now you just figured out your system. If I interview 100 people, I can expect to get, or if I ask 100 people, I can expect 10% of them to want to be on the broadcast, and I can expect 10% of those broadcasts to result in a client. That's a system. Now we can optimize the system. How do we optimize the system? Well, again, because we're programmed for more, we might say, well, if I ask 200 people, I'll be able to interview 20 guests and I'll get two clients. Well, you just signed up for a lot of resource investment, like lots of time, energy, and effort are going to go into doubling the number of people you ask and doubling the number of people you interview. And then you have to work with twice as many on the back end. So if you understand how system reliability works, then you say, well, I'm getting I'm getting an adequate number of podcast episodes by asking 100 people. What happens if I get better at how I convert listeners to a podcast episode into becoming clients? And so you work at the end, right? So if I do 10 broadcasts and I get one client, can I set myself a goal, an objective to do 10 broadcasts and get two clients? And then you can look at how, like now you can start testing, exploring what are, how do I improve, raise the floor on the average number of clients per episode or per 10 episodes. So that's that's the kind of process that we're using. And so when you say, like what data am I collecting? It depends on what you're optimizing for, what you're trying to accomplish. But just to do one more quick example, if I am starting a business and I agree with my assertion that the fastest way to grow a business is to find people that already know, like, and trust you, figure out what their primary concern or problem is, and figure out a way to solve that problem for them. I already have a viable offer an audience. And if my assertion is that conversations are the fastest path to cash, that if I actually have some sort of reach, if I reach out to the people that already know, like, and trust me with a solution to their problem, how many of those people can I get to purchase the solution that I have? And maybe purchase means, if you're in offer validation mode, maybe you're just saying if anybody will be interested and anybody will actually show up, and if you can get that result for them. But if you're in a more optimized, if you're optimizing a business that already exists, then it's about, well, how am I defining what a lead is? How does a person become a lead? How does a prospect, someone that's familiar with me but not um, paying close attention or interested in what I do, become a lead, someone that pays attention and is interested? How do I take a person that's a lead, someone that pays attention and is interested, and turn them into someone that's invested in the solution I have by becoming a client? And but then again, it would just be a matter of, okay, well, if out of every 10 leads I talk to, I get one client, then optimize your system for talking to leads to see if you can improve that by a reasonable amount. Usually it's, if you're getting one client a month, can you get two clients a month? Or one client a quarter, can you get two clients a quarter? Because if you can repeat that, continue to optimize the system, make something that's already working work a little bit better by improving the efficiency of the least effective component, your business will automatically improve over time and you'll get closer to what you want.
It sounds like it takes a lot of practice to map that. And I mean I've held you past time, so I have to wrap up with you. But I want to remember to also say that I need to re-up my membership on Creative on Purpose. I had it in my mind. I think March is when. So on Substack, and Scott Perry's on Substack, and that's where you can find all of the ways to connect and meet Scott Perry in person. Um, so I like that you use the word assertion. That keeps me, remembering my assertions, my assumptions, my previous notions, and those are hard to examine. But to find that little reward schedule within optimizing your process is something that I first on the surface feel like, oh no, oh no, 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 this feels way too much like work. This is not at all what I wanted to do. This sounds like a spreadsheet and forecasting or something. And getting into the nuts and bolts of it and actually thinking about this idea of a Google document, a PayPal link, now I'm starting to recognize other people who are there in that mentality too. I remember a while ago, I signed up for a woman's short course, and when I purchased it, she had it set up in some kind of a Google Doc, and I thought, does she? Does she? I don't think she's been to Scott's workshop. I don't think. But you start to recognize people in the world who, um, understand the basics. And so anyway, so I'm getting off track here because I'm trying to wrap up. But I think that did a fantastic job right there with bringing me back to the idea of, closing the gap, and what the workbook, the handbook, is for, is to work out these ideas in a more succinct. You say 90-day period. That's super helpful because I can get way off track in a couple of weeks or 6 weeks. And so 90 days is long enough to see that there's time to create an
Mhm.
outcome and find and experience a reward and kind of tinker with it. Plus, you can, in my brain, do a whole new 90 days again when that 90 days is over, right? So, I mean, that's a lot like why we work in quarters, but sometimes I have to just start all over again and pretend it's a new 90 days.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Well, and just because I know you mentioned it at the beginning, I'll just say that this idea of engaging the field is this is how you close the gap. Like y the things that you learn or the tools that you acquire, the tactics and strategies that you acquire are not going to help you at all unless you actually use them. And if you test them in the wild, in the field. And so the whole idea of you were curious about data, like how am I collecting data? You're collecting data by taking your assertion, taking the tools, tactics, and strategy that you have for proving that assertion, and putting and doing it out loud and in public, because that creates a very tight feedback loop. You will get data. You might not
mm,
like the data, but you will get
okay.
data. And then you can actually make data-driven decisions. Like, I had this many conversations, this many people said no. Okay, that's not that doesn't feel good, but how can I make more people, how do I help more people say yes next time? And that gets us into a whole nother conversation around tactical empathy and empathetic antagonism and all that sort of thing. But um, for anybody that is interested in the book, you can actually it's $1 on Amazon, and it's free on the creativeonpurpose.com website.
Oh,
Um, and the Substack, uh, you can get lots of free information about closing the gap there. And if you want to join cool people like Elizabeth in the community, we talk about this type of thing multiple times a week, and we do deep dives every single month. And there's lots of downloads for spreadsheets and all the other things that maybe are not exciting things that you want to have to put together on your own. I've been doing this for a long time. I have lots of resources, and for the folks that join the community, I'm always happy to share assets and resources that I have on hand.
hmm. Yes, you do. Okay, well, that's time. And Scott, thank you so much. Scott is Creative on Purpose on Substack, and that's Scott Perry, author of Close the Gap. And that's on Amazon, and we can find you on at your next meeting through the Substack. Through the Substack app, I can figure out how to subscribe and get involved in groups and meetings and workshops. So thank you so much for coming to the show, and I hope you have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It is always a delight and a joy to spend time with you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Oops, wrong button.
Are you on a
Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar.